My name's Monk Rowe, and we're in the Phillies Jazz Archive. I'm very pleased to have Wilson Chembo Corniel with me today. And my head is still sort of spinning from the wonderful demonstration and performance that the three of you gave yesterday. And I think I mentioned to Victor that most musicians that play club dates and that kind of thing, when they get asked to play a Latin tune, everyone plays The Girl from Ipanema. We know that. We can play a bossa nova. And then we're sort of stunned to learn how much more there is out there.
Oh, yeah.
Did you grow up with this as just part of the fabric of your childhood?
Well, it is part of it, but the thing is, when I was born and raised in New York City, so I had all these other influences around me, I grew up with the Beatles, Motown, Glenn Campbell, Willie Nelson, the Temptations, Rolling Stones, so it's a whole mixture of different things besides my Latin roots that I picked up at home. The records that my mother played, the Tito Rodriguez, the Machito, all the ballad singers, so that's always been in my ear. That the Latin part of besides my surroundings growing up, as a whole, as a musician as a whole. But as I grew up and played my conga drums, I started off playing salsa bands, Latin music, and that's my foundation is salsa music. So by listening to records and listening and knowing what the combination is with the percussion, we have three percussionists. We have a timbal player, a bongo player for a traditional salsa setup. So you have to know the functions of each drum to work as unison as one. It's not just banging away. There's a chemistry, there's a technique in order for it to mesh. And that technique, you gotta learn, you gotta know the basic patterns of that in order for you to grow and to do any other Latin style. That is the key to hold up. If you want to do a Latin tune for your club date band, if you notice those components, and then you can start up and do a little basic. That's not going to be watered down, but it's going to be authentic. We myself and people of that I work with the Latin people here, we go out of our way to learn jazz traditionally. We go and spend the time, so when we go to sit up and do a jazz gig, it's going to sound like a jazz gig. It's not going to sound like a watered down fake chords. You're gonna know the theory behind what you're doing and stuff, so you can go out and play authentically. You're not gonna wash it down. You gotta each style of music. If I'm going to study flamenco music, it's going to be the traditional style. If I'm going to do some straight ahead jazz, if I'm going to do some pop music, there's certain elements. I won't play the same with each genre. There's a key. I call it the law. The law, there's certain laws in each. I can't do this here. I don't need a full Latin setup when I do a pop gig. So this is where I have my drums and my effects, my toys, because this is more colors. If I do a Latin gig, I know I'm expecting conga, bongo, timbal. If I'm going to do a jazz gig, it's a different approach of playing that, even as a percussionist. So I'm not playing the same thing, banging away to everything. There's a certain elements. I play with Grady Tate, and he's a singer, and lightly. I didn't have to put my hand on the conga, the full hand on it. I just do my fingertips just to get a little sound, enough to back him up without overpowering him. In Latin music, you got to blow. So you got to know those things first. So when I sit down here and the guy says, "Man, you sound great, but I haven't done anything," all I did was follow the path that I was supposed to. And then on top of that, you put your own
in other words,
soul in there.
You fit in
right
first.
And then you got to experiment. Like you go through the door, see what's happening in there. You know, you can walk through further, say hi. You know, so you're kind of introducing yourself to each song and each style. So this is why we have. We also, you know, we go out into studying this to the full extent of each genre. Latin people. So and it dawns on me, why not, when the American people play a Latin tune, they won't go out and study these laws or the basics of a little tumbao on the piano, a little montuno. You know how to play. We told the same situation. I do a lot of club dates. So the guy wanted to play a little mambo dance music, a little salsa, right? Piano player goes don don ding don don ding ding don don ding. I said, what is that? That's Brazil. That's the samba. That's not that's not a 145 montuno that as a Latin thing. So that's all they have in their mind,
Right.
Because they don't take the time out to study Noro Morales, Tito Puente, Machito. You know, the basic things. You know, we had Ray Santos, who just passed away, teaching at City College and teaching these young students the way to do a certain, and it's easy, you know, but they don't take the time out into studying our music in order for that to sound correct at a club date.
So, is studying the music mostly an oral thing, listening to recordings?
It's both listening, but you have to play, you have to attack it, because you can listen to it now, transmit it to your hands, so you could play it the way you hear it. You know, so now you have to do a lot of listening to, because there are a lot of different styles. In Latin music, it's not just Latin music. There's big band Latin music, there's conjunto, there's charanga, there's somontuno, there's trio music. You see, so which branch of Latin music that you play now? See, so now we're starting to open up the can. Now, what do you want to do? You like big band, so I'm going to listen to Machito. I'm going to listen to not even Xavier Cougar. He was kind of a cross bridge between the Latin and the American. You know,
Yes,
so he would do the commercial.
Right, you'd find his like
know.
my parents would have had his LPs.
Right. Oh, that's the Latin LP,
50s.
right?
Right.
Xavier Cougar.
Right.
I got the chance to perform with him too.
Oh, right.
With the group, but he wasn't there. But with the piano player was the leader. Me and Victor got me the gig. We did a gig with his band. But you see, so now we're starting to divide this thing up. Now, for instance, big band for a percussionist. I'm a conga player. I'm expecting a bongo player, you're going to see tonight, and a timbal player. That's the full rhythm section of a big band. When you play conjunto is only like maybe 3 trumpets. Not like a big band 4-4 and 4 or 5-4 and 4 or whatever. But conjunto is only 4 or 3 trumpets. It's only conga and bongo. Charanga, it's another style of music. 3 violins and a flute, and that's a conga and a timbal only. So those combinations, you got to know, first of all, I'm not going to bring a pair of bongos to a charanga gig because there is no no bongos. So you see, those are the things that we have to, you know, teach first in order to start, you know, it's not as black and white as it is. This is now what style you're playing and who you're listening to, who plays that style, what groups. Charanga Aragon. Aragon is like Cuba's like a top charanga band. It's been over 65 years, you know, and this is a typical charanga is a style of music of a cross between the classical, and it was like an upper class music, Latin music, because they have violins and flute, but they put it into a cha-cha-cha, into a somontuno, but you still hear the violins. It's more of a high society music at the time. And they had danzones, which is a French contradance with classical music, but it went into a classical piece for the intro, then it goes into a somontuno, a cha-cha, the body, and then the head out is the same as the head in. It finishes out in a classical setting.
Oh, sort of like a jazz tune. You got the head at the beginning and at the end.
Right, right. So you go back, but in the middle, they did a dance part for the people could. Then that's where the Latin part came in. But you would start off at a sweet, blah blah blah, and then a certain hit, a certain break, and then and that's when everybody start going crazy and dancing. But then after that, it will finish you know, to end it off. So you're gonna play, you're gonna study charanga. Flute players, sax and flute players listen to, a lot of flute players will listen to charanga music for, you know, because that's a whole style in itself. Socaras, flute player, Cuban flute player that taught a lot. Alberto Socaras, he's one of the guys who taught in New York, and he's like one of the guys from Cuba, old school guys that had that style. They grew up with that style. Jose Fajardo flute. They played the black Cuban flute, the wooden flute, five holes, open hole.
Unbelievable.
Not the metal one with the pads. So, and, you know, you got a big band, Tito Puente, 5 saxes, 4 trombones, 4 trumpets, timbal, bongo, 2 singers, you know. So, you know, it's a full force, and that's a different way of playing that. See, so this is what has to be, first of all, taught first, you know, instead of, you know, watering down. If you know certain things, a little, at least 101, you know, Montuno, know a couple of tumbao, like we did yesterday at the class, at the second thing, we did that C7 Montuno with Victor.
Right.
See, that's a basic. If you could play that at any of those club days, that's passable. And it's so easy. You know, so the thing is taking the time out and really get involved with that, you know.
What do you do if you get called to play like a piano trio gig plus percussion, and it's going to be mostly swing music?
Yeah.
I mean, is that harder to fit into?
No, because luckily, like I said, born and raised in New York, I played with a duo. I played with a trio, sax, bass, and congas.
Cool.
And it works.
Uh-huh.
I played with a group, Paul Carlin, tenor player. He couldn't make it today. Paul Carlin.
I know Paul Carlin.
You know Paul?
His mother lives somewhere here.
Right. He's from up here.
Yes, he played here for a educational thing.
Yeah, well, I recorded his trio record. You see? So you listen to Paul Carlin. It's called Tresillo. And I'm on that. It's just acoustic bass, tenor, and me on 2 congas only. And you're going to see how that works.
I'll see.
Yeah, ask him about the new record. Tell him.
Okay.
So with that training, jazz things, because we go in and out, you know, of different genres, different things, different colors. We can take it out, and yet we have the tumbao is in there, you know. The main machine is running in there, okay? So when I do a jazz gig, I'll bring one conga, and I'll bring some shakers, some colors. It's not going to be all congas because it'll go to a straight ahead, but there's a way, a style of playing a conga in a jazz tumbao. It's more... So it could fit in as, you don't even need a drummer, because I could fit that part in there. You see, but this is the way that my training growing up in New York City with all these different environments, you know.
I was imagining yesterday, listening to the three of you, what would cause you to give somebody a look like, what are you doing? If it was, I mean, you all knew each other, obviously, but sometimes you get thrown together with different people.
We're
just like,
people.
Okay, I got a gig, let me get a band.
Right.
But what would, because this is a conversation, right?
Yes.
So what would someone do to make you like wince and...
Well, you know, throughout my lifetime, it happened a lot of times. You know, it happened a lot of times. You know, different people will take it differently, you know. Some people would yell, or the guy like, "What are you doing?" You know, or you know, you're not listening, or they would say something about it. Other people would adapt to it and shut up. Okay, this is what this guy's got to offer. So let me work around it till I can bridge it and fill in the gaps. So I got to carry him here because he's not listening to me. So then my approach is differently, and I can't overplay. Now I got to hold time because this guy's going crazy. So then I gotta hold time because, you know, I gotta have time and space to open up. If he's taking up all the space here, so what I'm gonna do? If I'm gonna do it at the same time, we're gonna be like this. It's like two people talking at the same time.
Yeah.
So if he's not giving me the time to respond to you, I'll just keep quiet. And then when he gets tired, I'll sneak in there. You know, so there's ways I work around that. And then I know for next time, who's on the gig? This guy's on it? So, well, you know, I got something else. You know?
Yeah.
You know, because he has no concept. He needs to study. He's got no concept. It's a conversation. You see, you heard it yesterday, the three. Each one had their spot. You know, we didn't have to fight for it.
Right.
You know, whenever it's there, it's there. It's a conversation.
There was a great moment when I think you'd been talking about how someone asked a question about how much improvisation is involved in most of the things. And the answer was that not as much as you might think.
Mm-hmm.
And then you played one of the rhythms, and Victor at one point gave this big smile. He looked at you guys, and obviously you had just done something a little out of the ordinary,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm assuming was improvised.
Mm-hmm.
So what is my question? I'm not sure I have a question, except it was very noticeable.
Okay, the answer is that you know, he might have done something. He said a conversation, which is his playing, and then loudly I answered him back. I communicated back with him like it was a give and take kind of thing, and this is what it's about. You know, if I was improvising, because I was doing the solo parts on the quinto and the congas, and he was playing his parts there, and then when everybody is first of all, the ensemble has to be there. First of all, together, we have to play where we're not fighting each other. We're laying a bed first, so you can lay on top and relax and do what you want to do. But the conversation and the ensemble part has to be together first before you go to the next step as far as the improvisation. Okay, so when he probably heard some communication between us or between us three somewhere that it was in time, because this is what we play for, and this is through experience, you get it. You know, because you can't say, okay, let's talk first, and you do this first. You can't plan that.
Right.
You know, this is what improvisation is. You can't plan it. I'm hearing you say, I'm going to answer you here. Oh, so it's going to give, I might do a riff. And then you might do the same rhythmically, like to give you, like on your solo, it could be blowing, and I can do a little, you know, and then you can answer it back to give you like something to grab onto. To communicate back with me, like I hear you, you know.
Yeah.
I hear you, you know. So I think this is one of those moments that you know we strive to look for when it's not planned.
But not overdoing it like that fellow you mentioned that you don't want to play with again.
Right. You know, see, you got to know the concept. See, he doesn't know concept. Then I know he's not a guy who's listening or studying this music for him to be playing like that. You know, you play by yourself then. If you want to be taking all the spots, give somebody else a chance to talk.
Yeah.
It's a conversation. You have somebody always talking and talking. You say, hey, I'm going home. What am I going to say over here? You know?
It happens on every level. I know, like if you go to a blues jam session, there'll be people up there who are so anxious to show what they can do that they don't play within the concept of the music. Right.
Well, you know, that's the feeling that we need to carry over within, you know, within all genres, and that happens. And once you have that with that whatever style of music that you play, that carries on to everything else, because you know when to lay out. You know, it's not all playing all the time, but you gotta hear the whole piece and see where you're gonna fit in. You know, you're not just going to jump in there and say, okay, without knowing what we're talking about, you know? So if you have that concept, why couldn't this other guy have that concept too? If he's a musician, then he's not studying. I mean, you know, he needs to study more about the theory, not the theory, but now this is now with the performing and experience of performing,
the etiquette,
of playing, especially, you know, you get this in jazz because it's so free that you can go anywhere, but you got to contain it. It's not like like a boxer. He's not going to give all his fight in the first round. He's not going to give all his thing and tire himself out. He's waiting, feeling you out, okay, here and there, so he can last 10 rounds.
Yeah.
You know, you imagine you swing in the first round, you'll fall on the floor. You know, you got to feel it out. So it's the same thing. You know, you got your space, you got your time, and it's going to come, and you feel it. You know.
Someone wrote a review about you, your recordings, and it says, as clave conscious as he may be, he has never been content with just being a timekeeper, nor does he look to hog the solo spotlight all for himself. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like just what you're talking about.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
You know, because that happens with my quintet. When a lot of people come to me and say, man, you let these guys shine. I lay out sometimes because I have a Latin jazz quintet, but I consider my group jazz Latin. It's a jazz band with congas. That's how I approach. Because once you hear Latin music, they think you got a singer, it's a salsa band, you know. So Latin jazz is a whole genre in itself. One guy in a radio station asked me, do you think the Latin jazz is a legitimate genre? I said, what? I said, okay, well, who's the founder of that? Who is the guy who made it popular? Is Dizzy and Chano. Mm-hmm. In 1945, when Chano Pozo came from Cuba, Mario Bazar introduced him to Dizzy Gillespie. This is where Manteca, Tintindeo, all those numbers. So if you don't think that Dizzy Gillespie is legitimate enough, he's the one who is the father of Latin jazz. But before him, it was Machito and Mario Bazar. Dizzy only made it popular. Mm-hmm. That, hey, this music is happening. It's been happening, big band style, you know, since the 40s already. So when Chano came in, he just mixed in with Diz, and then that's the marriage with jazz and Latin, you see? So therefore, then, you know, I say, you think Dizzy is not legitimate? You say, well, he's like the best. Well, he's the father of this, you know? Mm-hmm. So this is where I put him in his spot there, you know? So that's what it is.
So what's it like to make a living as a musician in New York City? Do you have to wear lots of hats?
Oh, yeah. Especially for myself, I'm an independent record company, Chembo Records. I had it since 2004. Mm-hmm. I have 5 CDs under my label. The third CD, Things I Wanted to Do, in 2010 was nominated for a Grammy, Best Latin Jazz, by the American Grammy, the NARAS. Mm-hmm. I was nominated along with Chucho Valdez, Miguel Zinon, Claudio Roditi, and Jeff Kaiser, pianist, I guess. But when you have a name like Chucho Valdez,
yeah.
Who's Chembo? Who is Chembo? But you know, but at least be nominated and being an independent. So I have to wear the hat of being a promoter. I'm my accountant. I'm the band boy. I'm the manager. I'm the booking agent. Then I got to practice. So of course I'm wearing all these hats because I'm independent. I'm not going to go to a manager who has 5 bands and he's going to give the work to his top guys. He'll give you the crumbs. I mean, you know, I just pick up the phone and I'll do all that myself. It's harder, you know. It's harder because I have to do all that now. It's not like before. Clubs are closing.
Yeah.
You know, so I have to look for these circuits with the colleges, and since I like that I see that there was a void in learning our music this way, like I was explaining to you. You know, I feel that we doing this rounds. I just came last week. I was in Tufts, doing the same thing. I did 2 clinics and I did a concert with the Professor's Latin Jazz Band at the school. And I was there with my group last year and doing the same thing. So he puts me into his jazz class with his students, and we do the same thing and trying to show them at least a little 101 mambo, tumbao, Latin, you know, to give you a style and how to play clave. Clave is so important because in Latin music, clave in Spanish means key. That's the key to the music. They say la clave es la llave. The clave is the key. Okay, so the reason why is that when you play clave, which is let's say a 3/2, I'm gonna tap it like, all right. Everybody knows that this is a 2-bar phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. So this is a 2-bar phrase. In Latin music, we write in 2-bar phrases, so you won't jump. In jazz, they do 1 bars here and there, and that's why, you know, you might do a 2-bar phrase generally, but if you put in an extra bar here and there, it flips it around.
Mm.
So this is why it's so important. Like when you're writing a Latin tune, that is the basis. First of all, that it's even. You write in every 2 bars.
Why would you choose to do the 2/3 clave as opposed
Well, it
to?
depends on the phrasing that you want to do. Like say you have a phrasing in your mind with the horn. Two, three, there's a pickup. You know, so it depends on the phrasing, and then that'll show you what clave, what side of the clave to put it. Then you start there and you continue. Now the reason why we phrase it around that clave as a frame, because that's where the dancers dance to.
But it doesn't always have to be played.
No,
Is that correct?
no, it's not being played, but it's emphasized on each part
Oh.
of the instrument. It's accented on the 3. You hear a certain downbeat. You hear a certain phrase. Ba 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 da dum ba 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 da dum da da. So once I hear da 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 da, I already got the clave. He's phrasing. So he's telling me what a clave is. There's the bass pattern. Bing bing boom boom bing bing boom. So now I know where it is on the bass. So by his phrasing. So this is after years of, you have to have it ingrained, you know. But first you got to figure it out and follow it. When I play a tumba on the congas, I'm hitting a certain part of the clave too. So my rhythm is also telling everyone what a clave is too.
Yeah.
The way I phrase it. 2 3 3 2. The accents where I'm going to hit the and a 4 or on the 4th beat. So when you hear that downbeat on the 4, you know it's the 3 side, the 4th beat on the 3rd side. See, so it's all in the instruments.
Yeah.
And so once you get used to it, then when everybody's phrasing on it, you can't lose it. You know, you hear it.
I can lose it.
I know, no, but I'm talking about for us who knows.
Yes.
But this is how we get into that. So, but the timbal player will hit a rhythm on the side like he was showing the drummer. So if the drum's on a cymbal, cha 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 cha. So he's playing that phrase. So he's playing he's playing with the clave too. So you go cha 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 cha. You see, so therefore, this is what we try to do with it. What we did yesterday with me, Casca doing Victor with the percussion, all those rhythms from all around the world that we try to. There's so much more than what we did, you know. But we got to learn it from the folkloric, from the really root of each rhythm, from where they come from. And
What was that word you used?
Folkloric.
Oh, folkloric. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, so we try to take each rhythm from the ground,
Yeah.
and dissect it from there to bring it and mix it with the jazz. So we got the jazz and we got the roots. So my group is like that. We're doing the straight ahead jazz with the bottom of the Africa, you know.
Okay.
You know, so you know, I give opportunities to my musicians all the time, where I give them space, I lay out sometimes, and this is why with that comment that you said before about, you know, I don't hog up all the solos, you know, it is my band, but I'm not going to be blowing all the time, but I got these great musicians here, and I utilize it.
You know, people forget, I think, that silence is a sound.
Ooh, big word right there.
Right?
That's right. That's right.
And when you come back in, it's much more effective
Right.
if you hadn't laid out.
Right, you got to breathe when you speak.
Yeah.
You have to take a breath, and so that silence is music, also. But you got to put just like improvising around a clave. It's like also soloing is another technique of soloing any instrument with the clave. So you're flowing with and then you let it breathe. So it's phrasing in around. You could do a phrase, take a breath, because that breath is where I gotta probably have a conversation with you. Da 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 da. Boo boo boo. You know, or some kind of answer, call and answer might happen there. You know, to help you inspire for your next. You know, so this is how we play with each other there, but very few have that. You know, if you get a group of guys here that has that mentality, your band is going to swing without even starting, just by playing the music, because we're playing it at a way that, don't worry, later on we're going to take it out, but at the end, we come back to take it out. You know, so you know that with jazz, the improvisation gives us the freedom, but you got to know how to anchor it, and this is where the other side comes in too. It's not the freedom for you to do anything, but the other side of you holding the bottom, holding the rhythm, and holding the time, you know, and locking in and playing clave and dynamics, you know, playing softer certain parts, bringing it up, bringing it down, you know. So it's all those colors together is what makes a complete band. Musician also with that theory.
Jazz, for decades, was mostly learned by finding a mentor and listening, and orally. Mm-hmm. And now it's a big business in education, and mm-hmm. thousands of books and manuals and how to improvise and all that. Mm-hmm. Has the same thing happened with Latin music?
Yes.
As far as now you can. Yes. All this stuff you're talking about is now written down.
Oh yes, definitely. You know, because when I was a kid trying to find information, we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have the internet. I had my album, I put it on a record, and I would hear the conga player, but you would hear the dominant hand, and you don't know what the left hand was doing. So therefore, you're doing it wrong, because you had to see that there's a certain technique that fills in a whole pattern of a tumbao. You know, here's doo-doo, pa, doo-doo, pa, doo-doo, pa. That's the right hand only, but what's this one doing? There's the other half that you don't learn, so you start picking up bad habits already. Until somebody who knows, I got in contact with these people that moved in my neighborhood, professional percussionists that were playing with Eddie Palmieri in the 70s, and they seen that I had a little bit of talent, so they took me up and cleaned me up and polished it. Then I was on my way even further. Then I went further. Then I learned how to read music on top of that. And then after that, which conga players they never gave a chart to. They only gave it to the brass players. Mm-hmm. You had to come with a cassette player and record the rehearsal and then memorize 8 songs. Wow. All the breaks and all that stuff. Wow. This is how we did it. You know, we don't have the internet and they didn't teach you how to read. We didn't have Latin music in the schools. We didn't even have a conga in the school. We just had maracas and a guido, which they call the fish. Remember? Yes. You know, the color ones, you know?
Yeah.
You know, that was their guido. You know, the guido for the cha-cha-cha, you know? You know, we got a fish and some maracas. That was the extent of Latin music in my school. The rest I learned in the street. You know, we all had a conga. We go to the park and start playing, mm-hmm. and then from there, I got my sound. We got rhythms, and we know what we were doing, but we were just banging and got a little groove always happening, the same groove, but we kept for hours and hours and hours and days and days and days until I bumped into a lot of people here. I was old enough to start going to the clubs and seeing the professional bands, and I would just stay there the whole night, just in the corner, looking at the conga player. And look and seeing his hands and what he's doing. Then I would practice it the next day, You know, I would try to memorize some
Yeah.
some riffs. You know, then they started to open up a school, Boys Harbor School of Music in Harlem, and then I went there, where they were all Latinos. They had a piano, bass, vocals, percussion, and then that's where we started learning. Those guys were helping us kids to read now, and play the right rhythms, and how to lock in, and the concept
Mm-hmm.
of playing with the clave and playing together. You know, so after a couple of years of that, then I landed a gig with one of the top bands when I was young. In 1977, Bobby Rodriguez y La Compañía, we were like a band of kids. We were like 21 anyway. And we had a sound of Latin mix, because the leader was a sax player and he played clarinet. So we had a Dixieland salsa kind of a sound. So we would do some Dixieland stuff, because he had a clarinet, no other horn. The salsa band had the clarinet. So the brass was a trumpet, tenor, trombone. So you get a lot of colors with those three. So the tenor player was the leader. He played flute, soprano, and clarinet. So we go to a bebop swing, then he would blow like a New Orleans style. You know, so we would mix that with Latin. It was something new and fresh,
Cool.
but the people were dancing to it. You know, so that band really put me on the map and started my career. You know.
Were your parents supportive of your musical path?
Yes. My mother was.
Okay.
My mother was. Because she tolerated me with my drum in the room.
Yes.
all kind of hours trying to figure out stuff and play my record player in my room, you know, kind of loud, you know. But I didn't do it like a inappropriate time, you know, anything like that, you know.
Okay.
You know, Mama's when we were kids, Mama, you know, you gotta know your limit, you know. So, but I didn't get any kind of negativity or never got held back by not doing this or don't do that, you know,
Yeah.
kind of stuff, you know.
You know, you made a comment when you came in today, and our professor who brought you over, you said something like, "I want to be like you when I grow up," and I'm wondering if this music keeps you young.
Oh yeah, you know, we just had this conversation, and back at the room over there at the hotel this morning, because we were talking about Lionel Hampton, how these guys when they get to the instrument, they had to help him up on stage. When he gets to the instruments, he feels no pain and he's playing. There was another guy that Cascadu mentioned. Then I mentioned Candido, 98 years old. He's still playing. He wears a brace for his arthritis in the back. He can't stand up. He leans on the drums. They put the congas, and he leans against him, and he plays. He's like a kid. Like there's a part of the brain that keeps that. Music heals. You know, music is it's medicine. You know, and you can see it within people with disabilities. You know when you must say play music or sing or play an instrument. You know, they're exceptional. You know, it's something about music that keeps you young. You know, so there's a lot of these guys that are playing with Clark Terry. You know, all these guys. Well, you had to help them on stage, but they sat down and they played like nothing. You know,
And they learn to play within, like if they lost their high notes,
yeah.
they
It
learn
doesn't
to
matter.
play without them.
Right.
Yeah.
They have nothing to prove because they did what they had to do. But the thing is, for him to be there and just put the horn and get a sound out and still have the same melodic, you know, he's talking to you like he would speak to you. He's
Yeah.
not going to scream at you now. He's not 50 years younger. You know, I mean, that's how I see it. Like, you know, music, you know, it'll never get old in you because it's part of you. It's part of it. It's part of your vocal.
Is there any physicality? I mean, I know there's physicality to what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Does it manifest itself? Like, do you get sore? I mean, I remember this anecdote. We have a piano teacher here who played with Don Elias.
Oh yeah, Don.
And he used to say that Don would have to like
shave
his calluses.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it depends on your hands too, on your You know, each one, my hand sweats a little bit, so it's a little moister than other dry hands. You know, so it depends. Some of that, you know, also plays a little factor. This winter weather here chops up my hands, cracks my hands a lot. I'm always moisturizing and stuff. But there's a lot of physicality in my job because as a conga player, we're not like a trumpet player or a brass player that they just go beep, 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 and put it down, rest for a couple of bars, and then blow. We're the ones who from beginning till the end play. But with all the years of playing, and I had to learn how to make my job easier. So this is where technique comes in. This is where technique. This is how this is how you conserve your energy so you can have stamina. And I can play for 3 or 4 hours playing my drum straight. But breathing, there's a technique of breathing. I kind of developed and learned when I play. You know, usually a conga they will see as a primitive instrument, and right away, what do you want to do? Bang on it real hard, right? You're gonna break your hands. So I play with the weight of my hand. That's loud enough. Just drop it on the drum. You don't have. So there, you got a ground zero where you can build up or go down. If you're gonna start here, what are you gonna do up here? You know, so you play. So I have students and I teach them that first of all, the tuning of the drums. You know, so there's a specific notes for each congas. Each, you know, you can hear melodies. You know, you hear Candido play Manteca on the drums, all those melodies.
I heard you do that.
Yeah.
On one of your
tunings. Yeah.
I wrote it down.
I do Oye Como Va.
Oh, that was it.
I can do
do.
You know, but you know, you got to treat the drum like a violin. When you play, you got to tune it first, right? You're not going to go grab a violin. You know, they got to have that same respect. It's an instrument also. So you got to sit down, you got to tune it first and make sure everything, you know, you got your notes that you want to. So right there, half of your job is done. If you play anything, if you hit any drum, it's going to sound pretty because it's in tune. You know.
I meant to ask about that with the three of you yesterday, and what's the double-headed
bata?
Yeah, the bata.
Bata, right?
Is that supposed to be the lowest pitched of the three? Of you?
Yeah, the larger one is the deeper
right.
pitch. The big side is called the inu, E-N-U. Inu, and the smaller is called the cha-cha of the drums. So the inu of the iya, which is the mother, is the deepest sound. I was playing the totele. In the middle, it's got like a mid sound. So we have notes that we tune to the toros also.
Oh.
E flat and then E flat. E flat for the low drum. And then the octave for the middle drum, and then a B flat for the high one.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you know we got those through records, and then you know we hear what drums sound authentically, and we try to find a note and we tune to that. You know, so this is research that we're doing. You know, to sound like them. You know, like the real deal. You know, and then plus knowing the rhythms. You know, so that's the lowest one. That's the one that makes the call. And I answer with my middle drum. The little one keeps time all the way and holds us together. You know, so it's all conversations, the same thing. So with that in mind, with that concept, conversation was with everything. That's the root. That's from Africa. You know, I call the first AT&T.
Oh.
The first texting. You know, you answer. But that's the first. Those are the first AT&Ts. You know. And texting and you know and messages, you know, and the same concept with the congas. You know, we have them tuned, you know, and each one has a specific rhythm to play. That when you play these three rhythms, it'll blend into one solid one.
Do you tune them differently if you're playing with pitched instruments?
What we do for myself, I play congas. My default for the two congas is G and C. Middle C for my lead drum and the G because it has no sharps and flats. You're not going to tune them to every chart.
Right.
You know, so it has no sharps and flats, but that's the most
compatible.
For fifths.
Fifth, yeah.
And if I have a third drum, I will do a B flat.
Up a fourth. I mean, yeah. Okay.
E,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
E. And my fourth drum, I would do an E. E. That'll be a C7 chord.
Okay.
That's where I play my melodies.
Yeah.
Do 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 bing boom bing bing boom boom boom. Oye como va. You see, so
I do see. So, if you did that specific song, then the rest of the band is playing in C also on purpose?
no,
Not necessarily.
It's only for the conga player.
Okay.
For me just to have. I can't tune to every key of every song.
Of course,
So,
yeah.
but this is with the following the law of my default on tuning the drums with the G and C. Those are the only obvious or compatible notes that I can play with within the G and C. I'll put the B flat, do a C, C7, and that's going to have to go with everything for the night. I did one time tune to each different key out of recording.
Oh.
But for recording, I had time, what key is this in? Give me the 4 notes, blah, blah, blah. Then I would tune it to that, so to just to hear, but it was a pain, and it was awkward. It was kind of awkward,
Yeah.
because now it's not the key that I was used to, the tuning that I was used to, in order to, it just felt strange,
Yeah.
So I just keep it like that all the
Yeah.
time. And this is what mostly everybody should do, or some other people. Candido tune. I got this tuning from Patato Valdez, and Candido tunes his up a step higher. He would do DCA. So he's a more of a brighter sound.
Mm-hmm.
I like the G and C, B flat, because it's warmer. It's in the middle. It's centered. It's a warmer, fatter, bigger sound for me.
Okay. Have there been tunes that have come along that you feel like pop hits? Let me go back. Jazz musicians, when like Kenny G came out, most of them were like sort of disgusted at what he was doing. I think it shouldn't have been called jazz in the first place, but at any rate, like a tune like the Macarena in '97, do those kinds of sort of novelty Latin hits bother you?
I see this is business, and he's looking at it as a standpoint of that. Kenny G, I think, also a couple of years ago recorded a Latin record, tried to do a Latin album so he could enter it into the Latin Grammys. Since it's Kenny G, thought maybe that he would have a leg up on it or something. I don't know, because it's Kenny G goes Latin. Cyndi Lauper did one, but hers came out really good. Singing in English, Cyndi Lauper, with real arrangements in clave, real musicians that know the stuff, and hip arrangements. But she's singing in English. That was a killer. But Kenny G, I see what you mean by that, because they're trying to step in, and this is all for me. It's a more of a business kind of tactic, because musically it wasn't going to go nowhere. Because people who know music and the general public, they hear Macarena, they rather hear the real one instead of a watered down one. So I guess he just tried to. It was an invention, or see where I can go with this. See if that opened up another avenue where I can make money. Maybe I could hit the Latin market now. Then I'll do whatever, I could do La Bamba next or something. Maybe I could get over that way. But tunes like La Macarena, it's more of a Brazilian based dance and stuff like that. So that's not even hit the mainstream Latin market.
Oh. Does a spiritual aspect of this music enter? Is it part of your?
Yeah, part of my religion.
Yeah. Okay.
Also, yes,
Because I know it was talked about a lot yesterday.
Yeah, those bata drums are ceremonial drums that we play in at ceremonies, at religious ceremonies, and you have to go through a certain procedure in order to be able to touch those drums. the authentic ceremonial drum. So we go through a whole ceremony to get initiated to play those drums. Only like people who play those because they have consecrated drums that are only used for these ceremonies. You could have the ones that we played yesterday. Those are considered like conga drums, like any other. You could buy them in the store out of the line. But the original ones that are done, like Cascadu said, they're tied up by rope or string or skin. They have a packet inside of the big one, like a medicine with herbs and everything like that. It's a packet that's where the saint lives in the big one. So and that one has to go through the ceremonies in order for them to be played by the sons by the sons of that saint, which we have to go through a ceremony and then be initiated as Omoanya, which is the child of that saint, to touch the drum there. So that's my religion is the religion of my drum. So this is why if you want to go, you got to go all the way. If you got to learn my music, I go all the way, and you have to learn where it came from, so to know where you're going. So therefore with that, and it's a whole total different thing. Now we're playing, you see it as 6 drums, 2, 4, 6, each side of the bata drum. He could be playing in 6/8, him in 4/4, and me in 2. And yet meshing into one. And then the conversations, those calls, it takes years of studying all those, to sing, and to each Orisha has a song, and it's in order. I think it's about 23, 24, between 23 and 26 Orishas. And within each song, there might be 4 or 5 conversations.
Wow.
So, and then there's chants on top of that sings to a specific song. So you can't sing this song with that rhythm. It doesn't go there, so you gotta know the rhythm, what it is, what is it for, which conversation are you singing it for. You can't sing this one back on there onto this conversation. So I it's a lifetime thing that so that makes me understand my drum. When I go sit down and play drum, I have all that power behind me, I have all that knowledge, and right away I just have one drum. That's where it's going to come out, because I know every square inch of that drum, where is it coming from, what I have to play, so all the things, within my whole experience, my whole lifetime so far, and I'm still learning. This is why I'm glad that I was raised in New York, where I had all those influences, and that it made you, you had to learn it, because the guy next to you, he's learning it, and he's gonna, get the gig or whatever, and if you stay back there, But this gives me another avenue also, besides playing, to teach.
Right. Well, I envision a part 2, 3, and 4 of an interview with you.
We only scratch the surface.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. When you speak very eloquently about the music, and
Sure,
I
you
really,
have to. You got to understand it that way. People just can't play or grab a horn and okay, let's play. Let's play what? But once you start playing, and now but you got to learn all these things first. You got to have that theory first before before playing. You have like classes where you learn and you play your horn, you learn your instrument, but what are you playing? Then you got the theory part of it, the other part which you got to sit down and listen. I can put records on for you. Yeah. What's he doing here? What kind of style is this here? And then, you got to have that other balance so you can know, first of all, what are you doing? Yeah. And then you grab your horn. That's another life right there,
Right.
To guide. So it's all it goes with every instrument you play, right. And any genre, classical, rock, anything you do. Sure. They have their own laws too.
Yeah.
I go play rock and roll. I paint my hair pink. I color it pink. I do what you want to do. Put some glasses on. Pierce my ear, my nose. Hey. Jump up and down, but I'll play my stuff.
Okay.
But...
Well, I'm looking forward to the big band tonight. I think it will be just a exhilarating experience, and I thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much.